Hello, students. Your topic for today is executive powers. So, the Constitution of India confers this power on the President of India and the Governor of States. There have been numerous views regarding the rationale behind the granting of pardons to the accused individuals. The case of Kehar Singh discussed the various grounds on which the power to pardon can be exercised. In view of the act that judicial error cannot be prevented due to human imperfection, recourse from these inaccurate judgments has been provided in the Constitution in the form of executive powers of pardoning or clemency. So, the concept of the power of pardoning is not at all contemporary. This power was exercised by the monarch, who was the sovereign head of the state during the British era, to safeguard against the judicial errors. This was indisputably accepted by the Supreme Court as the approach seemed appropriate in the Indian context as well. Basically, the power to pardon includes the power to commute, the power to reprieve, the power to remit the punishment in whole or in part. So, delving into the actual powers of the executive wing, President finds the power to grant pardon under Article 72, whereas the state executive, that is the governor, finds the power under Article 161 of the Constitution. President's power to grant pardons. Under the ambit of Article 72, Clause 1, the President possesses the power to grant pardons, respites, reprieves, remissions of punishment, or to suspend, remit, or commute sentences of any person who has been convicted of an offence, and where the punishment is by a court martial is for an offence against any law relating to a matter to which the executive power of the Union extends, or in where the sentence is a sentence of death. So the next subsection of Article 72 has to be read in accordance with the subsection 1, and it says that the powers conferred by any law on officers of armed forces to suspend, remit, or commute a sentence passed by a court martial will not be affected by the power of the President as in Article 72 1A. On the other hand, Clause 3 provides for power of the President to suspend, remit, or commute a sentence of death under Article 72 1C would not affect the power of the Governor of a state to suspend, remit, or commute a sentence of death under any applicable law in force. So, the landmark judgment of Maru Ram versus Union of India reviewed the power of pardon under Article 72. The court, while deciding upon the validity of 433A of the Code of Criminal Procedure in this case, examined the power of pardon under Article 72. Now, the governor's power to grant pardon. The power of the governor to pardon under Article 161, that runs parallel to that of the president under Article 72. However, this power of the governor dealt with under Article 161 of the Constitution is narrower in scope than the power of the president to grant pardons. The constitutional provision also empowers the governor to grant pardons, reprieves, respites, or remissions of punishment, or to suspend, remit, or commute the sentence of any person who has been convicted of an offence against any law that relates to a matter covered by the executive power of the state. In the case of Swaran Singh versus State of UP, the governor of Uttar Pradesh remitted the whole of the life sentence of an MLA of the state assembly who had been convicted of the offence of murder within a period of less than 2 years of his conviction. So the Supreme Court found that the governor was not posted with material facts such as the involvement of the accused in five other criminal cases. This unsatisfactory conduct in prison and the governor's previous rejection of his clemency petition in regard to the same case. Whereas in the case of KM Nanavati versus State of Bombay, the reprieve granted by the governor under Article 161 was held constitutionally invalid since it conflicted with the rules that were made by the Supreme Court under Article 145. After the decision to grant pardon is taken by the executives, the result is again available for judicial review by the Supreme Court. As in Satpal versus State of Haryana, the court quashed the order of governor to pardon the person convicted of murder on the ground that the governor had not been advised properly with all the relevant matters. The court held that such an order tends to be arbitrary and irrational. The case of Bikas Chatterjee versus Union of India restated the principles of judicial review on the pardon power. Though the trend towards greater judicial scrutiny of the power of pardon is undoubtedly a welcome one, the judiciary must leave the executive with the window of discretion in the exercise of the same. If we do not combine democratic governance with firm governance, we shall have no one except ourselves to blame for lawlessness resulting from the abuse of the provisions relating to pardon by criminals guilty of heinous crimes. Now, the executive powers of ordinance making. So the ordinance making power of the executive need to be suitably restrained to create a balance of power between the executive and the legislature in India and to check the misuse of the same. Another constitutional power given to the state and union executive is that of ordinance making. It must be noted that this is not a new feature added in the Indian constitution. Under the Government of India Act 1935, this power was given to the Governor General in Article 42 and 43. Members of the Constituent Assembly having experience of abuse of such power were understandably wary of including the same in the Constitution. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar said that it was very important to confer upon the President the power to promulgate a law which will enable the executive to deal with that particular situation because it cannot resort to the ordinary process of law when the legislature was not in session. This makes it quite evident that the constitution framers invest his power only for unforeseen sudden situations and where the executive required additional legal sanction to address the situation. However, the executive decided to completely neglect the requirement of necessity for immediate action. According to data furnished in the statistical handbook of the Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs, more than 41 ordinances were promulgated during the term of first Lok Sabha itself. Indeed, in the pre-Indira Gandhi period, that is before 1966, more than 75 ordinances were passed by the central government. The necessity of taking immediate action by promulgating ordinances has remained debatable at best through the years. Now, the president's power to ordinance making. So, usually, parliament has power to make laws, and it alone cannot pass laws on union list matters. However, there may be some conditions when the parliament is not in session and it becomes necessary to make laws. In these cases, our constitution under Article 123 gives special legislative powers to President of India by promulgating ordinance under certain circumstances. Thus, if both the houses of parliament are not in session and it becomes necessary to make laws, then the president can make laws within the powers provided by the Constitution of India. In case of Satpal and Company versus late governor of Delhi, it was ruled that the power to issue an ordinance by the president is co-extensive with the legislative powers of the parliament. The important provisions regarding ordinance making power of the president of India are: first, the president gets the power only when the parliament is not functioning. Even if one house of parliament is not functioning, the president can pass on an ordinance. Second, the president has power to pass an ordinance on matters on which the parliament has powers. Third, the council of ministers should suggest the passing of an ordinance on such matters. Next, the president himself should be satisfied about the need for the ordinance and he cannot be compelled. Then, once an ordinance is passed, it should be placed before both the houses of parliament and approved by then within 6 weeks of their respective dates of reassembly. And last, the ordinance lapses if it is not approved within the oversaid 6 weeks, or if it is rejected earlier, or if the president himself withdraws the ordinance. Now, the governor's power in ordinance making. So, the state executive, that is the governor, gets such power from Article 213. The lawmaking power in the state is inherently vested in the state assembly, but there may be situations when the state assembly is not in session and it is necessary to make laws for the state. In such circumstances and in such cases, Article 213 of the Constitution provides that the governor of the state can promulgate an ordinance. There are some provisions regarding this. First, if at any time when the legislative assembly of the state is not in session, or where there is a legislative council in the state, when both houses of the legislature are not in session and the governor satisfies that it is necessary to make the law, then he can promulgate ordinances. Next, the governor has power to pass an ordinance on matters on which the legislative assembly has powers. Then once an ordinance is passed, it should be placed before legislative assembly of the state, or where there is a legislative council, before both the houses and approved by then within 6 weeks of their respective dates of reassembly. Last, the ordinance lapses if it is not approved within the oversaid 6 weeks, or if it is rejected earlier, or if the governor himself withdraws the ordinance. But there are certain circumstances when the governor shall not promulgate any ordinance without the instructions of the president. These are instances when the bill contains the same provisions which require the previous sanction of the president, or the governor would have deemed it necessary to reserve the bill for the previous consideration of the president, or if an act contains same provisions which has been reserved for the consideration of the president. Now, the executive power of dissolution of legislature. So the president, the constitution gives the power to the president of India to dissolve the house of people under article 85. The upper house, that is Rajya Sabha, can never be dissolved. The provision is a British one where the king is bound by the advice of the prime minister on the dissolution of house of commons. Article 85 does not require the aid and advice of prime minister to dissolve the house, but nevertheless has to be read doing with article 74. In occasions, the advice of prime minister is not required for dissolution of the house. First being when the prime minister loses his majority in the house, when he is unable to prove his majority, when a no confidence vote is passed against him, and lastly when he is not facing the parliament, but parliament has the proof that the ruling party has no majority in the house. Dr. Ambedkar in the Constitutional Assembly debate said that the President of India shall test the feeling of the House whether the House agrees that there should be dissolution, or whether it House agrees that affairs should be carried on with some other leader without dissolution. So the president, before going to dissolution, should find out any alternate ministry if possible. Furthermore, the ministers hold office during the pleasure of the president as provided in Article 74, Clause 2, which makes it clear that the president can dismiss a minister at his will. In Dinesh Chandra versus Chaudhry Charan Singh, the court held that to argue pleasure could be interpreted in Article 75, Clause 2 to mean the president can dismiss any minister at any time at his will. Subsequently, in the case of S.P. Anand versus H.D. Devoghuda, it was held that since ministers also include prime minister, the president can dismiss prime minister also at his will. Now, the governor. So the governor has the power to dissolve the legislative assembly under Article 174 of the Constitution. However, this power is neither explicit, not any convention has been developed in this regard. Clause 2b merely says that the governor from time to time dissolve the legislative assembly, and no circumstances have been provided in this regard. Generally, the assembly is not dissolved till the expiry of the subscribed period of 5 years. Nonetheless, in exceptional circumstances, it can be dissolved by the governor before the expiry of the normal period. MV Pillay, in this regard, opinioned that it is not a normal practice to dissolve a legislature before it has completed its prescribed period of life. Dissolution at an earlier date with a view to appearing to the electorates and seeking to solve a situation of political instability is an accepted principle of parliamentary system of government. The circumstances when the governor can dissolve the legislative assembly are: first, when the chief minister enjoys the majority support and advises the governor to dissolve the legislative assembly; second, due to the defection of the members of the ruling party, or by another reason the ruling party comes in minority; third, other party or coalition of parties is not in position to form the government; fourth, on the basis of the report sent by the governor that the constitutional machinery of the state has been failed, the president may dissolve the legislative assembly on the recommendations of the union cabinet. That's all. Thank you.